Look at him, eating whatever he wants, never gaining a pound. While I'm stuck with the boring special and can't lose an ounce.
How's your lunch, man?
Amazing. Yours?
So good.
Oh, I'm so happy for you.
Cool, buddy.
Weight loss isn't fair, but Mochi Health is. The affordable GLP-1 source that can fix your frustration with food.
So, same time next week?
No!
Definitely.
And your friends. Learn more at joinmochi.com. Mochi members have access to licensed physicians and nutritionists. Results may vary.
This episode of Voices for Justice is sponsored by Shopify. Starting a business is filled with a lot of what-ifs. What if I fail? What if nobody listens to the podcast? What if nobody cares? It can definitely be hard to get over that doubt and uncertainty, but making that leap was one of the best things I've ever done, and it's great to know that I'm not alone with a business partner like Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Heinz and Mattel to brands just getting started. And I'm telling you, their tools really do feel like you have a business partner. They have hundreds of ready-to-use templates to help build a beautiful online store that matches your brand. You can also get the word out like you have an entire marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And if you get stuck, Shopify is always there to help with their award-winning 24/7 customer service. It's time to turn those what-ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/justice. Go to shopify.com/justice. That's shopify.com/justice.
Voices for Justice is a podcast that uses adult language and discusses sensitive and potentially triggering topics, including violence, abuse, and murder. This podcast may not be appropriate for younger audiences. All parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Some names have been changed or omitted per their request or for safety purposes. Listener discretion is advised.
My name is Sarah Turney, and this is Voices for Justice. Today, I'm discussing the case of Susan Poupart. This case has defied resolution for nearly 35 years. It's also cast this profound, enduring shadow over a family and entire community in northern Wisconsin. In the early morning hours of May 20th, 1990, 29-year-old mother of two Susan Poupart went to a party, was last seen getting into a car with some men, and was never seen alive again. This is the case of Susan Poupart. It's May 19th, 1990 on the Lac du Flambeau reservation in northern Wisconsin, and 29-year-old Susan Poupart, or Susie as most knew her, is getting ready to go to a party. But her grandmother has a bad feeling about it. The feeling is so strong that she begs her to not go out that night. This is something that, according to Susie's sister, ate away at their grandmother until she passed away many years later. This concern, this desire to protect her is understandable because Susie had a rough few years up to this point. According to reporting by PBS Wisconsin, by this time Susie had her own home on the reservation where she lived with her two children, Alex, who was 3, and Jared, who was 9. She worked as a server at a local casino. But she had more creative aspirations. Susie was a budding artist and sculptor. A few years prior, she was studying at the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico. But when she became pregnant with Alex, she moved with Alex's father to New Hampshire, where he was from. According to Jared, his family was less than welcoming to Susie due to their prejudice against Ojibwe women. And pretty quickly, it got even worse when this boyfriend became violent. So Susie left. She took her 2 kids and went back to where she grew up on the Lac du Flambeau reservation to be with her family. One woman cited in that same PBS Wisconsin article, who didn't wish to be named, says Susie also helped other women escape abusive relationships. She said, quote, "Susie was a good friend who always helped me, especially when I was trying to exit a violent relationship. Like me, she had bad luck with men. But she sure loved her kids," end quote. That's one thing that seems clear about Susie. She was extremely devoted to her children. She wanted a better life for them and for herself, which also meant going out and having a bit of fun sometimes, especially because she had such a great support system to lean on when she needed to blow off a little steam, like on the night of the party. Susie arranges for her kids to stay with her sister Dawn overnight while she goes out. Now, this party has been described as being an after-bar house party. Basically, according to an interview Alex gave to Dateline and several statements from investigators, this was a party held for Susie's friend's brother who was leaving to serve in the military. So kind of this last hurrah goodbye party. According to that same reporting, the party was on the reservation, and only about a mile south of Susie's house on Little Pines Road. This is important to keep in mind as I tell you about her case. Now, the timeline of when Susie arrived at the party is unclear, but we know that it ended pretty late. Susie was seen leaving between 4 and 4:30 a.m. on now May 20th, 1990. And she was not alone. It was believed that she was last seen getting into a Buick with two men in their early 20s, Robert Elm and Joseph Cobb. Alex Poupart believes her mother knew these men. She told Dateline that that's just how it was. Quote, "A reservation is a small town. Everybody knows everybody." End quote. It's unfortunately unclear exactly what happened next, but witnesses state that everyone was intoxicated. And here's where things get scary. There are conflicting statements about whether Susie got into the car willingly or if she was forced into the car. Newswatch 12 reports that one man told police two men forced Susie into the car. But Local 7 News WSAW-TV reports that Joe Fath, then a detective sergeant with the Vilas County Sheriff's Office, said outright that there were no reports that she was forced into the vehicle. So, like I always say, take that for what you will. But wherever they went, it didn't appear to be Susie's home on Little Pines Road. While these men did tell other people at the party that it was their intended destination, the car was seen turning in the opposite direction. Essentially, Susie's home was about a mile north, but they took her south instead. This is the last confirmed sighting of Susie.
At DSW, we ask the important questions, like, what shoes are you going to wear? Whether you're prepping for wedding season, festival season, or just planning the ultimate vacay, the right shoes can make or break an RSVP. So own the moment. You've got big plans, and we've got just the shoes. At the perfect price, of course. Get ready to get ready with Designer Shoe Warehouse. Head to your DSW store or dsw.com today, and let us surprise you.
This episode of Voices for Justice is sponsored by Chewy. If you have pets, you probably know about Chewy, and you also know that when they say that they have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy, they're not messing around. To keep them happy, Chewy has over 100,000 products from all the brands my pets love at prices I love. To keep them healthy, Chewy offers pet prescriptions, pet insurance, telehealth vet visits, and they're even rolling out vet clinics across the country. I've been shopping with them for a very long time. And in addition to the auto-ship feature that gets the dog's food to them every single month, I also love to experiment with different treats. But I'm a bit picky. For me, it has to be high quality with simple ingredients. I recently picked up treats from Shepherd Boy Farms that are 100% just chicken breast. Popcorn and Heber are already obsessed. Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. And right now, you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewpanions.chewy.com/Sarah E. Turney. That's chewpanions.chewy.com/Sarah E. Turney to save $20 on your first order with free shipping. chewpanions.chewy.com/Sarah E. Turney. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. After Susie Poupart fails to return home from a house party on May 20th, 1990, her family is understandably concerned. But her sister Dawn waits a few days to report her missing. Susie going out and staying out overnight wasn't completely unheard of, but not checking in on her kids was. That's when Dawn knew that something was seriously wrong and reported Susie missing. Now, at this time, Lac du Flambeau didn't have a tribal police department like we've encountered in other cases. So this report was made to the Vilas County Sheriff's Office, who took the lead on her case and all other cases on the reservation. Outside of a few years living in New Mexico and New Hampshire, Susie was a lifelong resident and member of the Lac du Flambeau Band of Lake Superior Chippewa. This is a federally recognized tribe that has inhabited this area since 1745. According to their official website, ldfdtribe.com, the name Lac du Flambeau was given to them by the French and was inspired by their practice of harvesting fish in the nighttime by torchlight. The reservation spans just under 90,000 acres, and as of the year 2020, its population was estimated to be about 3,500 people, making it a relatively smaller reservation compared to much of the others in the U.S. Like Alex said, it's basically a small town where everyone knows everyone. Now, Vilas County did quickly launch an investigation into Susie's disappearance, and they dispatched patrol deputies and members of the local fire department to search for her. Members of the community, of course, also participated in local foot searches, but Susie wasn't anywhere to be found. At first, they thought that because the party was so close to Susie's house, she may have wandered through the woods separating the two properties and got lost or got hurt somehow. So the sheriff's office brought in specially trained canines from Minnesota to help track her scent, but they also couldn't find anything related to Susie. While they were physically searching for Susie, investigators were also working on interviewing people who were at the party that night. The exact number is unfortunately unknown, but witnesses quickly point to the two men she was last seen with. Again, that's Robert Elm and Joseph Cobb. According to reporting by Dateline, Cobb and Elm told investigators that they were in the car with Susie that night and planned on taking her home. But they say that after Susie got into the car, they all got into an argument, and they ended up dropping her off at the old Lac du Flambeau Elementary School. This is about half a mile south of the party, so the complete opposite direction of Susie's home, which would correlate with witness statements about seeing the car go south instead of north. But of course, it doesn't make any sense if their intention was really to drive Susie home. Joe Fath with the Vilas County Sheriff's Office has said several times that he believes the men stayed with Susie for some time, and then something must have gotten out of control. Both Cobb and Elm were considered suspects in Susie's case pretty much immediately, and like we see in so many cases, slowly but surely more information began coming out from partygoers and people on the reservation who were just hearing rumors about the party and what may have happened to Susie. Investigators would soon discover that a third man, a cousin of Robert Elm named Francis or Fritz Schumann, was also in the car with Susie that night when leaving the party. Like Cobb and Elm, he is also considered a suspect in this case. However, he has been even less forthcoming than Cobb and Elm. Investigators have called him outright uncooperative, and Fath told PBS Wisconsin that he believes all three men know that if they keep their mouths shut, they're less likely to face charges in this case. Which is really what seems to happen. While Cobb and Elm did give those initial statements, they really haven't told investigators much else. Mostly just that for some reason they dropped Susie off at this elementary school around 4:30 a.m., and that due to being intoxicated, the rest is a blur. This really is where Susie's trail ends at this point, getting into the car with those three men. There are no confirmed sightings of her, and investigators don't find anything related to her disappearance in any of the searches. Not a piece of clothing, a wallet, there's just nothing. Until Thanksgiving Day. That's when two deer hunters find Susie's partial remains. According to reporting by Lauren Stevenson for Newswatch 12, the men were in the Chequamegon-Nicolet National Forest in Price County, Wisconsin, about 12 miles from where Susie was last seen, and about 100 yards from a forest road. This area has been described as a thick cedar swamp, and is said to be frequented mainly by local hunters. As these two men were making their way through the forest, they saw a purse in a pile of brush, really kind of underneath a log. They also found Susie's tribal ID and a jacket. And as they pulled the jacket out from under this log, they found a human jaw. They immediately called authorities. They also hung Susie's jacket and ID on a nearby tree to help them find the exact area where she was found. Both the Vilas County Sheriff's Office and a crime lab field response team were dispatched to the area. Investigators do believe that Susie was sexually assaulted. Essentially, they say that while it seemed clear that animals had been a factor in scattering her remains across the area, they did not see the same pattern with her clothing. Here's part of that reporting from Newswatch 12.
On Thanksgiving Day 1990, 2 hunters were walking here in the Chequamegon National Forest in Price County. They came across this area where they found Susie Poupart's purse, her tribal ID, and a jacket underneath this log. When they pulled the jacket out, they found a human jaw.
There were indications that the remains had been scattered by animals, and we didn't see that same indication in the clothing.
Investigators believe Poupart had been sexually assaulted and left naked. They also think her remains were wrapped in plastic since they found plastic and duct tape at the scene.
The remains had been covered by logs and brush. It appeared there was animal activity that dispersed the remains, and the vast majority of the remains were not recovered.
Susie was officially identified using dental records, and investigators asked her son Jared to identify her purse and a necklace found at the scene. Remember, he was only 9 when his mom went missing. In his interview with Dateline, he said, quote, "He told me my mom wasn't coming home, and I refused to believe him at first. Later, police showed me her purse and a necklace found with her, wanting me to identify them as hers, but I didn't understand." End quote. According to statements made by FAF, while they did confirm that this was Susie, unfortunately, they weren't able to determine her exact cause of death due to the lack of remains found. There just wasn't enough evidence to say how she died. But based on how her remains were found and the plastic material found at the scene, it was ruled a homicide. At this time, DNA technology was still relatively new. So while they did gather and preserve evidence from the scene, they weren't able to do the extensive testing we're used to seeing in newer cases. Basically, they could just determine that there was male DNA on some of the items found at the scene. There was no official link to any one particular man. However, investigators were able to make a link between their suspects and the area where Susie was found the old school way. It turns out some of them were known to hunt in this exact area. This episode of Voices for Justice is brought to you by Quince. I've been trying to be more intentional about what I wear each day. I'm leaning into pieces that feel effortless, comfortable, and still put together, and Quince has been my go-to. The fabrics feel elevated, the fits are flattering, and everything just works without overthinking it. They use premium materials like 100% European linen, organic cotton, and ultra-soft denim. And the best part? Everything is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They work directly with ethical factories and cut out the middlemen, so you're paying for quality and craftsmanship, not brand markup. I recently just ordered their tiered linen dress, of course in black. I wanted to pair it with one of my favorite pairs of brown wedges. The problem was, I didn't have a brown purse. So I got that from Quince too. It's one of my favorite outfits. It's easy, effortless, and feels amazing, especially as we're getting a little bit warmer here in Phoenix. Refresh your everyday with luxury you'll actually use. Head to quince.com/justice for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/justice for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/justice.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why customers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
After 29-year-old Susie Poupart's remains were found by hunters about 12 miles away from the party she was last seen at, time, the elements, and animal activity didn't do investigators any favors in preserving the scene. But they knew one thing for sure. They had a homicide on their hands. And pretty quickly, they were able to link 2 of their 3 suspects to this area. It turns out that Robert Elm and Joseph Cobb were known to hunt deer in this exact area. But they weren't talking. In fact, according to reporting by PBS Wisconsin, Robert Elm, Joseph Cobb, and Fritz Schumann all left the reservation shortly after Susie's remains were found. Though the reporting that I found doesn't specify which one of the suspects that Fath spoke to, he did travel to Florida to talk to one of them. And this process lasted for several days. And in at least 2 instances, this man asked Fath to remove a picture of Susie he had on the table, saying he didn't like her eyes staring at him. Fath told PBS Wisconsin, quote, "I had a picture of Susie that I kept on the table the whole time. I said, no, the picture stays here. You need to see her." End quote. But despite Fath pressing pretty hard, Susie's case went quiet for a few years, until the district attorney convened a series of legal proceedings called John Doe hearings. They had 2 in the early 1990s and a 3rd in 2007. Now, these aren't held everywhere, so I want to explain exactly what they are. In the state of Wisconsin, they have these John Doe proceedings. It's, of course, a legal process conducted by a judge to investigate whether a crime has been committed, and by whom. They can be used to try to compel witnesses to testify, and basically make some type of progress in a case through this testimony. They're also used to determine if there is sufficient evidence to move forward with a prosecution. Basically, everything is up to the judge. Now, these can be initiated at the request of a district attorney, or from a citizen complaint if the DA refused to press charges. The judge does have the ability to subpoena and examine any witnesses, and if the judge deems it necessary, a John Doe proceeding can be conducted in secret. If it is secret, the record and testimony are basically sealed. Only the judge and DA can access it, unless portions of the proceeding are deemed relevant for use in later court proceedings. The judge can also issue what they call a secrecy order, which can apply to the judge, prosecutors, law enforcement, interpreters, and reporters, but it cannot be applied to other parties. Now, witnesses testifying in these proceedings do have the right to have an attorney present to basically consult with, but the attorney can't do any of their own examination, cross-examinations, or make any arguments. It's actually pretty similar to a grand jury, except it all boils down to what the judge thinks. Like I said, the first 2 hearings were in the 1990s, and these were held in secret. But the 3rd hearing in 2007 was made public to help put some pressure on the people that they believed had information. However, despite the media being present for some of the hearings in 2007, the transcripts for all 3 as a whole are sealed. So we don't know everything. But here's what we do know about the 2007 hearing. All 3 suspects were subpoenaed to appear and testify at this hearing. Robert Elm did appear, but the judge stopped the questioning upon discovering that he did not have a lawyer to represent him. Fritz Schumann also appeared, but he invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination and did not answer questions. And Joseph Cobb did not show at all. Newswatch 12 was one of the local news stations covering the hearing.
Vilas County Chief Deputy Joe Fath told the court the 3 people police believe are connected to Poupart's death are Joe Cobb, Robert Elm, and Francis Fritz Schumann. Fath says records show the 3 got in the car with her the night she disappeared. Cobb did not show up in court today. The other 2 did take the stand, but Robert Elm did not have a lawyer, so the judge stopped his questioning. When Schumann testified, he invoked his Fifth Amendment rights. Vilas County Chief Deputy Joe Fass says they are not giving up on this 17-year-old murder investigation because every day they are getting closer and closer to finding the person or persons responsible for the death of Susan Poupart.
We're getting closer to the point where the district attorney's office can review the entire case file to make a probable cause determination.
One step closer to solving this unsolved murder. Today's John Doe investigation is used to determine whether criminal charges should be filed in the case. Court was scheduled to continue tomorrow, but will reconvene in September. This will give police 2 months to track down Joe Cobb. Chief Deputy Joe Fath urges anyone with any information to come forward in this case.
Joe Cobb was eventually located, but these hearings ultimately didn't result in any charges against any of the 3 men.
What they did to your family, you're lucky to make it out alive.
Streaming on Peacock.
These men are going to come after me. Taking them out is my only chance.
Put a bullet in her head. From the co-creator of Ozark.
Looks like a family was running drugs.
Execution-style killing is rare for the Keys. Any leads on who they might have been running for?
The cartel killed my family. I'm gonna kill them. All of them.
MIA. Streaming now. Only on Peacock.
Robert Elm, Joseph Cobb, and Fritz Schumann all eventually moved back to the reservation. According to statements made by now Chief Deputy Fath, they've all been arrested several times on charges of violence against women, drugs, and assault. But none have ever been charged with Susie's murder or anything related to Susie as of recording this episode. Fath even said directly that his office was trying to charge them with every other crime they were found to have committed, stating that they, quote, really need to go to prison, end quote. But Fath attributes the lack of progress in Susie's case to community members choosing to stay silent about what they know out of fear of retaliation, and a general mistrust of the government, which has unfortunately been earned by law enforcement officials. As far as Susie's children, well, they've been pretty vocal about the impact this has had on them. After their mother's death, they were separated. Alex was adopted by one of Susie's friends, while Jared stayed with his grandmother. Though in the end, they were raised by a variety of different adults. They were in and out of foster care, and at times experienced homelessness. They also learned that some of the adults they were in the care of misappropriated the funds they were given to care for them. Jared says they basically live in this community while their mother's murder was this open secret to most. He says one of the suspect's children would tell him directly that her dad didn't kill his mom. Eventually, he says he turned to alcohol and fighting to cope with all of it, before realizing that his mom wouldn't have wanted that for him. He later began working at a tribal economic support program to help those in need. In that reporting by PBS Wisconsin, he said, quote, "That's not who I want to be remembered as, you know? The guy whose ma got murdered. And he went off and just beat people up and drank his whole life. I'd rather be remembered for helping people." End quote. Alex now has 5 sons, and she's a stay-at-home mom. She says she was angry too, and she now lives near the house her mother was last seen at. She has a lot of the art that her mom created during her time at the Institute of American Indian Arts, and she shares her mother's memory with her children. She has hope that this will be solved, saying, quote, "When it all comes out, I can explain everything to them and how we are now getting justice." End quote. Jared and Alex have discussed what they think happened to their mom. They believe that she did get into the car with those men, resisted their sexual advances, then she was sexually assaulted before being killed and then taken to the forest. Investigators also agree that this theory is likely. Jared said, quote, "We've always heard that it was her beauty that got our mom killed. Since she wouldn't be with them willingly, they had to kill her." End quote. And Fath wasn't giving up on Susie either. He was really trying anything he could to find some kind of break in this case. He even consulted with a psychic for help, but said that they weren't able to uncover anything useful. Susie's case was also featured on a cold case playing card deck distributed to prisons in the area. And in 2013, Joe Fath became sheriff of Vilas County, a position he holds to this day. And of course, as DNA technology evolved over the decades, Sheriff Fath pushed for more testing. They ran more tests in 2014, but nothing came of it. He also had this really great idea. He sent in deer hair that was found in the Buick Susie got into the night of the party, and deer hair found on her remains for testing in a lab in Alabama to see if they could determine if the hair came from the same deer, which obviously would be a huge connection to make. But a hurricane destroyed the lab and the evidence before the testing could be completed. Just such a cruel twist. But again, they went on. They put up a billboard with Susie's picture and case information on it. But shortly after that, it was vandalized and then destroyed in a fire. Fath told PBS Wisconsin, quote, "We decided to put up the billboard so people wouldn't forget about Susie. Those guys had to look at her face every time they came to town from the reservation. We figured someone involved with the murder destroyed the first one." End quote. Luckily, the billboard was replaced, but it didn't help push the case forward. Around 2018, a new detective joined the department, who again wanted to push for more DNA testing. He estimated that the cost of everything that they wanted to do would be about $30,000, far above their budget. But they actually made it happen. They applied for a grant from the nonprofit Season of Justice. Susie's daughter Alex created a GoFundMe, and YouTuber Ron Carlson, creator of the channel Faces of the Forgotten, donated $10,000 for additional testing as well. Finally, in February 2025, investigators submitted 3 of their most promising samples to different labs for analysis, and even more in April. But it doesn't appear that anything has come from that testing. Or, like I always say, if it has, they haven't told the public that yet. Susie's billboard, which had nearly faded to be completely white, has also since been replaced along Highway 47 in Lac du Flambeau. And in May 2025, the Lac du Flambeau tribe put up a $25,000 reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for Susie's murder. Investigators say that they want the public and the 3 suspects in this case to know that Susie, her family, her murder is not going away. Which brings me right to our call to action. Please share Susie's case. Sheriff Fath recently announced his retirement after 44 years with the Vilas County Sheriff's Office. His last day is December 1st, 2025. I'm sure he'd love to see this case finally have a resolution before he leaves office. Like he said, Susie, her family, her murder isn't going away. Alex and Jared have discussed the impact their mother's murder has had on their lives across a handful of pieces about this case. Jared remembers the mother who would carefully lay out his school clothes every night before he went to bed, and says these 3 men took away his and Alex's whole lives with their mom. Countless birthdays, holidays, major life events. Alex giving birth to 5 children without her mother by her side. And they say that when they turned to traditional Ojibwe spirituality for healing, they would often have to share these spaces with the men suspected of her murder. This is something that they have lived with every single day for nearly 35 years. And their only escape would be to leave the only community they've ever known. Really the only community their mother ever knew. So please share Susie's case. It is so underreported on and greatly in need of some media pressure. Sheriff Fath says that he still has hope that as these suspects age and get closer to the end of their lives, or as those around them get closer to the end of their lives, that new information will come to light to finally get Susie the justice she deserves. He said, quote, "I'm confident that there's people in Lac du Flambeau that know what happened. They just have not come forward. That's what we need. We need that tip. We need that assistance from the community to solve this case." End quote. And as we know, media pressure can move mountains. So again, please share. As a reminder, 29-year-old Susan Poupart was last seen in the early morning hours of May 20th, 1990 on the Lac du Flambeau Reservation in northern Wisconsin. She was last seen getting into a Buick with Robert Elm, Joseph Cobb, and Francis Fritz Schumann. Anyone with information is asked to call the Vilas County Sheriff's Office at 715-479-4441. You can also submit a tip anonymously via the Vilas County Sheriff's Office website, app, or by texting the word Vilas, VILAS, to 847-411. Again, there is also a $25,000 reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction in Susie's case. But, as always, thank you, I love you, and I'll talk to you next time. Voices for Justice is hosted and produced by me, Sarah Turney, and is a Voices for Justice media original. If you love what we do here, please don't forget to follow, rate, and review the show in your podcast player. It's an easy and free way to help us and help more people find these cases in need of justice. Welcome to the Secret After Show. The studio door is open, and our emotional support puppies, Popcorn and Heber, are in the room. Let's go right into the case and right into media discrepancies. Honestly, mostly I think it was a lack of media. There wasn't a lot about Susan, which unfortunately is not uncommon in cases of missing and murdered Indigenous people. I think one of the most confusing parts was which suspect was doing what. Which man was doing what at these John Doe hearings? Which man, went where when they left the reservation? This was also coupled with some reporting refusing to name the men. So because it was pretty unclear in my opinion, or at least not as clear as I'd like to report on it in a definitive way, I did just leave it vague. The next thing I had on my list, I wanted to talk about the upside of the CSI effect. Because when I read that the hunters hung Susie's jacket from the tree, my first thought, screaming in my head, was no, don't do that. Don't touch it. Don't get your DNA on things. Just wait for the people to come. But with that being said, I want to say it was also the year 1990. It was not their fault. I think that they were doing all of this in good faith, and I really, really would never wish for them to have any guilt about this. However, it did make me think. It just made me think, and that's what this after show is for, about the upside of the CSI effect. If you guys don't know what that is, I did do a whole episode about it on my Patreon. It's basically the effect of consumers watching CSI specifically, and really, all of these true crime shows. I think now we're it's ingrained in our heads, right? Don't tamper with the crime scene. Do not touch the crime scene. Touch DNA, trace DNA, hair, fibers. There's so many things now that they can find at these crime scenes. And while obviously I do think that there are some downsides of the CSI effect, I wanted to keep it positive and talk about the upside of it. I feel like nowadays, if somebody found that scene where Susie was, I don't think the same things may have happened. They could have, but I just feel like I wanted to point out that I think that there's some positivity when it comes to all this true crime consumption. And now I think the general public is more aware that you see a crime scene, you do not touch it. And while we're on a positive note, let's roll right into the hero, or in this case, heroes of the episode. You guys, I have Sheriff Fath. He was there from day one. He's been with this case for over 35 years now, if you count, when Susie first went missing and not just the day that she was found. He's been with this case for so long. And I know that no investigation is perfect, but I think that he really did try so many options to solve this case. And I specifically put that it was for him keeping that picture of Susie on the table the whole time, saying, "No, I will not remove it. You need to see her." In my notes, I put, "Let's go." Like, I love to see it. I love to see it. I think that that was the right and appropriate amount of pressure to put on that person at that time. I am not an investigator. That is just my feeling. But that's why he made the hero of this episode. And I truly hope that he does have the best retirement. I also have both of Susie's children, obviously, for being extremely outspoken in the media and keeping their mom's case in the public eye. And not only that, for having to live in that space every day, the journey that they had to go through. I mean, they touched on it in these articles, and I'm sure it's barely scratching the surface of what they've had to deal with to live, eat, breathe, function in that community where everybody knows this open secret and some people are upset about it, being screamed at in the street, my dad didn't kill your mom. There is no escape. And I think that it's extremely brave for them to kind of stand their ground and not leave. And not to make it about me, but I'm often asked, why don't you leave Phoenix? There's so many bad memories there. Why don't you just leave Arizona and start fresh? And it's because this is my home. This is my home, and it's not going to make me leave. I'm standing my ground. I'm staying here. This is my home. This was Alyssa's home. And I feel not to speak for them, but it must be similar in some fashion for them. That is their home. That is where their mother grew up. That's where their community is. And they have stood their ground. They have stayed despite what I have to imagine is trauma nearly every day in that space. So as always, I am always just sending all these families and these children, now adults specifically, so much love. Last but not least on our list of heroes, I have everyone who contributed to the DNA testing. Of course, as a former board member of Season of Justice, I have to give a shout out to them for awarding a grant in this case. I also, again, want to shout out YouTuber Ron Carlson, creator of the Faces of the Forgotten channel, who donated $10,000, which is just amazing to see. I love creators who give back, who donate, and I feel like it's this taboo thing to honk. What was it, honk? It is escaping me. I feel like it's this taboo thing to gloat about what you donate. It makes me extremely uncomfortable. I don't like posting or talking about the donations I make because I feel like I'm just showboating. So I like to do it for other creators. So shout out to Ron Carlson for donating $10,000, angel on this earth. I don't know anything about him, so don't come for me. But I think that was an amazing thing to do. And of course, again, back to Susie's kids for creating that GoFundMe. Now let's talk about our segment of hope. I am reading from an article from NBC Boston from Mark Fortier and Asher Klein. This is from September 8th, 2025, and the title reads, "A Promise Kept, Final Bear Brook Victim ID'd, Search for Two Women Continues." So many people sent this to me, and thank you, as always, thank you. It was one of those stories I could not escape this week. I'm sure that you've heard it, but it makes our segment of hope for obvious reasons. The final victim in New Hampshire's Bear Brook murders has been identified as Ray Rasmussen. She was the daughter, unfortunately, of Bear Brook murderer Terry Rasmussen, and her mother, Pepper Reed, is still missing. Now, if you are not familiar with this case, which in all transparency, I was not. It's not a case it's a case I have heard of a ton of times. It is not a case I have independently researched, which is my bar for talking about it. If I'm going to talk about a case, I want to be educated on it, and I am not. But I did look at a quick case recap. So essentially, if you're not familiar with it, in 1985, 2 bodies were found in a barrel in Bear Brook State Park, and 2 more were found 15 years later. 3 of the victims were identified in 2019, and they were all last seen in 1978. The 4th victim was not identified until now, which of course we now know as Ray. And of course, I want to give credit where credit is due. How did this happen? Well, it looks like the DNA Doe Project has another win in their books. They had their team of genetic genealogists basically trace back her ancestry and find her. It sounds so simple, but it really is amazing what can happen when there's just resources, time, and energy allocated to these cases, especially cases that are a little bit older. I know that this is kind of a mix of like older and newer, but again, it's just incredible, and it makes our segment of hope for obvious reasons. But as always, thank you, I love you, and I'll talk to you next time.